So here's the base of the x-axis, and we're going to put these bearings into this spot here. These two will go on this side, and they'll make an idler for the pulley. And you're going to mount it with an M4 16mm screw. Now you can try juggling both bearings into this spot and punch the screw right through it all, but it really tends to be one of those things where you end up dropping it a bunch of times. So maybe just put the screw through a little bit, get the first one in there, and you can just kind of turn it upright like this, so that gravity kind of helps it land on top of that screw. And you just kind of feed that screw through a little more. And then once that's in place, you don't want to go so far that you're going to block the second one going through, but it's a lot easier to only have to line up one bearing than it is to line up both bearings. So once you get that set up, it's very easy to get through both bearings once you have the first one started. So anyways, I'm just spinning by hand right now to get it through, but check from the back. You should be able to see the color of the screw there in this hole to know that you're in the right spot. And you are going to snug it up just a bit with an Allen wrench, but you can't go too tight because these need to spin very smoothly. So you pretty much just want it snug. You don't want to pinch this, and you'll feel that free movement there. So do the other one, and then you'll be ready to move on to the next step. Here I have one side that's installed correctly and one that's installed incorrectly. Now it might look the same, but if you take a close look, on the side that's installed correctly, the head of the screw is all the way down to the plastic. That's the way it should be. The other side, there's a slight gap. It's not easy to spot the gap, but it's definitely there. And we just need to tighten that all the way down. Because you're screwing this into, think about it, it's 3D printed plastic, so it's going to feel snug. Don't let that fool you. You need to make sure that you are tightening that down all the way. It should still let the bearing spin freely. That's the key thing. You want it tightened correctly and still spinning free. So here on the x-axis, there's this big opening here, and this will take two of these linear bearings. Now, depending on how tight this opening is, it might not slide in as easily as you just saw there. You might have to actually kind of convince them they want to go in there. But if it's loose or if it's snug, it doesn't matter either way, because you're going to actually kind of tighten things up whenever you put screws through here. Where do those screws go? We'll set this aside because we now need to put the motor in the front of the base of the whole frame here, and then this goes right on top of that, and then those screws are going to go through to that motor, and it's going to help pinch this whole frame here together. So set this aside and get ready to put a motor in this. Here I have one of my smaller motors. I did this on purpose because for my x-axis I don't want to use one of my larger ones. You might have all the same size motors and that's fine. But since I have two small ones, two large ones, I'm using one of my small ones for my x-axis. Now when I feed this in, I'm pointing my wires down, because if it's on the side it won't go in here. So I'm going to feed it downward and I'm going to line it up here. Now I need to cap this, the piece we just were working on, feed the screws through. But I wanted to line it up in this base first. I'm just going to kind of set it on its side here, and I'm going to go get the screws to put this all together. Now I do want to tell you that there's an easy way that this all goes together. But because I'm using pieces I ripped off of other bots, particularly this shape pulley, I actually have a very tricky maneuver ahead. So this piece really just goes on top like this, nice and easy, and you just screw it in there. And it's easy because normally you're putting a pulley on here first that goes through this opening. But this one does not. If you look, it's too big. Right? It doesn't fit through the opening. Now there's a way to get it to work. It has to do with a little bit of patience, but it's pretty easy when you see it on video here. I want to point out though that it's possible if you gutted like a PrinterBot Smalls, for example, you have that smaller pulley style, and you wouldn't have this issue. But I do have this issue, so you get the bonus of seeing it on video. So the first thing to do if you have this issue is pre-soak your screws with thread locker. You're going to just back them out of the pulley, put a little dab of thread locker glue on them. Don't go crazy, just a little bit. Bots like these, it's nice to be able to actually take them back apart. I'm going to take out the second one there. And again, just get a little dab of thread locker glue on there. All right. So they're pre-soaked so that whenever I do have the ability to mount this in place, I don't have to go and try to get this in there. Because you're going to see in a second here, you're not going to get that shot. So you can't put it on the shaft first and then feed it all through this frame. You could if you had the smaller style, but I don't. So what I have to do is I have to drop it into this slot opening here first. So you kind of just have to angle it, and it falls into here. See, I got it in the side of there? Okay. Then I slide this over the motor. Now it's helpful to know where the flat side of the motor is, like face it, you know, towards the bottom or something like that, so that you can keep track of it. Okay. Now, when I slide this over the motor shaft, okay, I can get an eyeball like idea of how far up the motor shaft should I be. So I think you just need to be a little bit below the rim. The motor shaft is just below the rim to have this line up perfectly with these idler pulleys, so the belt's gonna have a nice clear path. So knowing that depth, I now just open up this area a little bit. I gotta kind of squeeze a little, and I can actually see, I get the camera, show you, you can actually see those set screws in there. So what I need to do is, one, get my Allen wrench attached to them. Now you might just pull the whole thing out of here off of the motor shaft and, you know, get your Allen wrench into a screw, or, you know, you kind of keep it attached, whatever suits you. But once you get your Allen wrench in on that screw, okay, get that screw lined up with the top of the motor shaft. So like I'm at that point now where I'm on the top of the motor shaft. I got my first set screw. It's already pre-soaked with thread locker. And I got it real close so that I don't need to turn it much more to get it to pinch the motor shaft. Actually, I did pinch the motor shaft. All right. And I'm just going to push. So I got a grip on the set screw in this tiny little slit here. That's what I've done, is I'm gripping this set screw. This is pretty crazy, actually. And I'm pushing here. And you can see just faintly that I'm able to actually push enough that that motor shaft, I can see it's poking through, right? I know I need it just below the rim. So I'm feeling with my fingertip that I'm in the right spot. I know I'm hitting the flat side of that motor shaft, and I'm turning this set screw there. Now that I've tightened that set screw, this is firmly attached at the right depth, and look, I can see it now that it's there. It's completely clear. It can spin in here. Okay, it's fine. All right, all I need to do now, and by the way, I do want to tell you, because I've tried this a couple times, if you put this too far to the edge, you go too far up the motor shaft, it'll then get stuck on this rim. So you got to really be patient and get the right depth. But anyways, all I need to do now, because it is firmly attached, is I just got to rotate this and get my second set screw. I'm going to firm all this up, and then we're going to go ahead. And I just want to show you, I'm not kidding around here, right? It's really in there. I'm pulling on this. Okay, you really can hit those set screws with this larger pulley style by hitting them from in here. Just make sure that you give it the right depth, because once you tighten this all up, see how I got clearance, okay? You see how I have that clearance there? You have to have that clearance. You can't have this too far out that it's hitting this plastic, all right? So anyways, I'm going to jump ahead with it all tightened up and ready to put the screws in, but that's how you can get the other style pulley into an Adoptabot. Now that I tightened it up, I thought I'd show you again. You want the end of that shaft just below that rim, because once you line this all up, I'm going to go ahead and line up all the holes here and pinch this tight, okay? You have cushion, you have clearance. Okay, when this motor is in here, I don't have it screwed in, right? But when this motor's in here, it's not hitting that plastic rim. There's room for it to spin. So even though this is the wrong size pulley, ripped off of, you know, some other printer bot that I had, you know, it fits, it spins, all right? Definitely works, all right? So just want to show you, now that I actually have it secured, it's much easier to open this up and show you. There is plenty of room back here to reach that set screw. So like it might have looked like it was a really tricky thing, but like these little Allen wrenches, I mean, you can get in there. It's no trouble. So get that all tightened up. Again, you're just below this rim. And if you get to the next part of this, when you finish out this step, you'll know if you can't turn this, you know that you put it at the wrong depth. All right. So let's go ahead and get to that part. All right, so picking up where I just left off, I have this pulley now attached, and in the video, I didn't have these in here because mine are kind of loose, so you might have to put these back in because you're about to tighten this whole frame that's going to pinch these in place. Also, I kept showing it like from this angle because it looked easier, but really, okay, this is the orientation that it is. So that motor from the bottom view, okay, is the flat side of this, all right? So you need to make sure you got this oriented the right way because I was kind of just holding it whatever to get that set screw in. So these 4 holes are going to line up the 4 holes to that motor. and it is really just a 16mm screw into all 4 holes. I'm just going to do like one corner here to get this all situated. I'm sure you can finish the other 4 spots, but it is a 16mm M3 screw. I'm just kind of punching it through by hand here, just a little faster. But anyways, I do want to point out a couple quick things here. One is that if you're like me and your bearings are a little on the loose side there at the bottom, okay, this should be the step that pinches it in. So if it doesn't pinch in very well, you might need to go back and forth, kind of tighten a little more here. You might have something kind of holding you up on being able to get this to flex and pinch that there. Hopefully you didn't oversize things when you went to print it, okay? But that really should give you just enough movement, because they kind of, like, this side's holding in, but this side's a little loose. It's just barely loose, so it doesn't need to flex a whole lot to pinch them in place. So 4 screws, all 4 of these openings, and snug it up good so that these linear bearings here hold in place. So because I had it pop out a couple times in the video, I really want to show, like, once I tightened all those 4 screws down, I can't knock these loose. All right, they really are there. And if you think I maybe printed a replacement, I had a couple defects in my part. So go back in the video and notice I have like a stripe through here where it didn't print very well, right? I didn't play any tricks there. So it really is, able to flex enough. I had these fairly loose. They are in there snug. And all I did was I just turned this till it hit the motor shaft, and was snug. I mean, I guess I can still kind of inch it a little more, but I never go too much more than just like firm, So because you can rip the threads out of a motor pretty easy. So this spins freely, isn't caught on anything. If yours is caught on something, you didn't get this depth right, okay? I said just barely below that rim, right? And once I snugged all this up, I was surprised to see, like, it got really, really close. Like, my big gap earlier in this video kind of almost vanished, right? So if you went too far in front of that rim there, I actually think that I might have done better to even slide it even a little further back. But it's good where it is, so I'm not going to mess with it. But it gives you an idea that, I really, really meant it when I said just barely below that rim. So this should be nice and snug. These 2 idlers should spin freely. Can't have any hang up here. This should move easily with your finger going across it. All right, and you are pretty much ready for the next step. This should sit nice and flat. This is the base of your printer. We're going to add a bed here. We're going to add the Z-axis coming up here, and you're off to a good start.